If you or someone you know is struggling with alcoholism or addiction, do not hesitate to reach out for help. You can find numerous free resources on our website, thebeginagainpodcast.com, and there are tons of resources and support networks available online, in person, or just a phone call away. You don't have to face this challenge alone. Welcome to the Begin Again podcast. I'm your host, Gary Menkes. On the Begin Again podcast, we delve into the inspiring journeys of individuals who have overcome alcoholism and addiction and emerged as true trailblazers in entrepreneurship, business, sports, and beyond. Through authentic, uplifting, and profound conversations with our guests, we aim to shatter the stigma surrounding addiction and demonstrate that recovery can be a catalyst for remarkable success, strength, and resilience. We firmly believe that by listening to these accounts, you will be empowered to unlock your own potential, instigate positive change in your life, and contribute to the creation of a better world. So, get ready to be inspired and embark on your own personal journey of growth with the Begin Again podcast. Welcome back to the Begin Again podcast. I'm your host, Gary Menkes, and joining us today with his powerful message and inspiring story is Tim Lodgen. Tim is fitness and health coach, a former U.S. Marine, MMA fighter, and junior Olympic boxer hailing from Baltimore. He is a survivor of a 27-year battle with bipolar disorder, alcoholism, drug addiction, and multiple suicide attempts. But today, Tim travels the country speaking at addiction and mental health events to raise the awareness of these diseases. His purpose is to help one person heal from these deadly afflictions and to inspire others to know that there is a help for them and that recovery is possible. Tim, thanks so much for coming on. That is one heck of a bio, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. First of all, thank you for having a platform that allows me to come on and share and possibly reach one more person. We never know who's going to hear this podcast. We never know what situation they are in life. And just hearing what we have to say could save their lives.
I couldn't agree more. And like we just said off camera, the mantra of this podcast is to help one person today. And, that's the prayer I say right before I come on every podcast. I say a quick prayer and I say, God, please, let's help one person today. And I told you off camera as well. I knew you were coming on. I actually asked, let's help for a few more people today.
Absolutely. Let's get as many people as we possibly can.
Let's do it. What was that the other saying, right? From where you're working now, one of the places you're working. What was that line? That was an amazing line too.
So one of the nonprofits that I work for is actually, it was started by two Marine Corps veterans. And it's specifically with first responders and veterans for mental health, addiction, and suicide prevention. And their motto is one more is one less. And what they truly mean by that is one more person that we help is one less we lose to suicide, mental health, or addiction.
Beautiful, man. I mean, that really is. You said that off camera, offline. I was like, we got to bring that into the show. I love that line. So Tim, tell us about your amazing story. Let's hear it. I know you're from a boxer from Baltimore, but let's hear about what was it like growing up for you?
Yeah, I was born and raised here in Baltimore. The only time I wasn't here was when I was in the Marine Corps. But I grew up primarily with my mother. My father and my mother got a divorce when I was 6 years old. So I was just about into first grade. I think it was just right after kindergarten going into first grade. And I primarily just grew up with my mom. For the first year or so, I thought it was my fault that my parents got a divorce. I have a brother who's almost 11 years older than me. So to me, as a young boy, I was like, what did I do? Did I not clean my room? Did I not bring home good grades? Did I not listen? Why did my father stick around for my older brother? He was almost a junior in high school. Here I am starting first grade. Why did he leave me at such a young age? And he would call and say, hey, son, I'm coming to pick you up. Pack your bags. We're going to hang out for the weekend. And I'd pack my bag and sit by the front door. Hour would go by and nothing. The phone would ring. Hey, buddy, I got called into work. Can we reschedule till next weekend? I'm sorry, something came up. This happened so much that when my mom said my father was going to come get me, I would just not even pack my bags. I sat at that front door with my bags packed. I can't even remember how many times for hours. And it was always the same thing. Something came up, let's reschedule. So for me as a young boy, I thought my father didn't love me. I took that and held on to that resentment for 30 plus years. And when I got into my addiction, I used that as fuel to get high and get drunk. Because in my brain, if my own parent didn't love me and didn't want to be around me and spend time with me, then why should I love myself? You know, your parents are supposed to love you unconditionally and want to spend time with you. And if my own father didn't want to be around me, I didn't want to be around myself. So I'd rather numb the pain and forget about the whole thing. But my mom did a great job raising me. She put me into sports. She kept me busy. And in fifth grade, she ultimately met the man who became my stepfather. He was more of a cool uncle, an older brother. There was no, hey, bud, I love you. You know, he taught me how to be a carpenter. He taught me how to water ski, snow ski, taught me how to drive a boat, and taught me how to drive a car. But it was more of a big brother kind of a thing. And there was no emotional attachment with him. He never yelled at me. He never cussed at me. He was, like I said, just a really good older brother or a cool uncle, but there was still no emotional attachment. But again, my mother kept me busy. She kept me into sports, which was really great. In middle school, I was almost a professional skateboarder. I grew up here in Baltimore with Brandon Novak from Jackass and Vivo Bam. He was best friends with Bucky Lasik at the time. So when Bucky was in town, I would go hang out with Brandon and we go skating. I was able to skate with Bucky, and that was a really good time in my life. I almost became professional. I was sponsored by a couple local skate shops down here in Baltimore. I was sponsored by independent trucks. I was really into it. And it's funny because I look back at everything that I did. When I played baseball, I wasn't just the pitcher. I was the all-star pitcher. When I played football, I wasn't just a running back. I was the high-scoring running back. When I was skateboarding, I didn't just skateboard. I became, almost professional.
Yeah.
When I became an addict, I didn't just become an addict. I became a full-blown addict. So I truly believe I've always had that addictive personality, even as a small child. But I kept that more in positive, more sports-like. I got into high school and still I was not interested in drugs. I was not interested in going to parties. Ninth grade, I started with my first real girlfriend. And that's when the skateboarding stopped. I completely dropped the skateboarding and I was more interested in girls at that point. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I did. But ninth, 10th, 11th grade, still no drugs, no alcohol. I hung out with my friends and, we would go to the park and go down to Loch Raven. Here we have a beautiful reservoir here in Baltimore that people can go hiking and biking and go fishing and stuff. I would do all that stuff, but I was not interested in drugs or alcohol. A friend of mine had a welcome to high school party and he invited everybody over. And that was the first time I got drunk. I drank Schmitz and Colt 45 malt liquor. And I got so sick, man. It was awful. And the next morning, my mom picked me up from my friend's house and she just looked at me and she said, "You drank last night, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "Well, the rest of your weekend's going to be ruined. I'm not going to punish you. Hopefully that's punishment enough. But we're having a cookout today and I need 50 ears of corn shucked. So you're going to go in the basement and shuck all 50 ears of the corn. Here's a bag for you to throw up in, and here's a bag for you to put the shucked corn in." And she said, "That's going to be your punishment." And that truly was. And that I did not want anything to do with alcohol after that point. So I got through 10th grade, 11th grade. When I got into the summer before going into a senior, I knew my grades weren't good enough to get into college. And a lot of my friends that I were hanging out with at that time started getting into drugs. And I really wasn't interested in doing that, going down that path. So my father, my brother, both of my grandfathers were all in the military. So I decided I was going to join the military myself. And I decided to join the United States Marine Corps. When I got into senior year, for me, I told myself, I've got 1 year. And then after 1 year, the shit's going to hit the fan. Everything's going to get serious. So let me have some fun this year. Let me go to some parties. Let me drink some beer, have some experiments. And it was kind of just a phase for me. So I started going to the parties. I started drinking. And for me, when I drink alcohol, it lowered that barrier. It lowered that wall. And I was the guy that, well, if I'm already drinking, what else is at this party? I would like to try some other things at this party. So I started smoking pot. I started tripping on LSD, eating mushrooms, smoking PCP, taking pain pills, ecstasy, K2, kind of like all the party drugs, the rave drugs. Because in the 90s, that's when the raves were around. That's when I was in high school. So I was totally into all that stuff. Thank God there was no heroin around in the county that I lived in at that time, because I'm pretty sure I probably would have tried it, but it wasn't around. So, but I tried everything else that was readily available from my friends and around the neighborhood. When I graduated, a month later, I went into boot camp. The drugs stopped at this point. There was no more drugs when I was in the military. But once I graduated boot camp and I was stationed in North Carolina at Camp Lejeune, when we got off at 4 o'clock, we left the base and we went to the bars and the strip clubs. And the bars around the bases, their mottos were, if you're old enough to take a bullet for the country, you're old enough to have a cold beer. Mm. So at 18, 19, 20 years old, they were serving us. Mm-hmm. Their only stipulation was, you can come up to the bar and buy a beer and take it back to your seat, but you can't stand there holding it just in case an authority figure, police, or somebody walked in. You could take a drink of it, but once you were done drinking it, you had to sit it back down at the table just in case they walked in, you weren't in possession of the alcoholic beverage. And we would see our sergeants at these bars, late 20s, early 30-year-old guys, and they would just say, don't get into a fight. Don't get locked up, and make sure your ass is up at 3:30 in the morning, ready to go run it. Other than that, you gentlemen have fun. So it was never deterred for us not to do it. It was almost as if it was a badge of honor to see how messed up we could get at night and still be at formation at 3:30 in the morning, drunk, ready to go running 3 miles and do everything that we had to do for the day. It's what we did. And at 18, 19, 20 years old, you can do that because you're 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
So I spent 3 years in the Marine Corps. We did 6 months in Somalia in 95. Now, this was after wartime. The war had ended, but we had went over there as a peacekeeping mission. But as Americans, we were not welcome over there at that time. I was never in a firefight. I was never in combat, but there was very high tensions the entire time we were there. Anything could have happened. Luckily, nothing did. But when I came back, after being in that type of a country and seeing what war had done to its people and its community, it had an extreme effect on me mentally. When I got back to the States, I had a really hard time readjusting back into being in the United States, not being on my toes, looking behind my back 24/7. And I really just had a hard time readjusting. At that time, I had broken my ankle twice during training and being over there. And they came up to me and they said, well, look, you are no longer fit for your MOS, which I was an 0311 infantryman. They said, you can have surgery and you can change your MOS and finish out your last year in the Marine Corps, or we can go ahead and discharge you honorably and you can go home and go do your Montgomery GI Bill, because I had saved up about 2.5 years of the Montgomery GI Bill. So I said, you know what? You guys aren't touching me. I don't want to have surgery. I'm out. Mm-hmm. So at almost the 3-year mark, I went ahead and got discharged, took my honorable discharge, and came home. The first month when I came home was great. I didn't have to get up at 3:30 in the morning and have to go running. I didn't have to have my hair cut a certain way, shave every day. But that second month hit me, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm 20, going on 21. I'm living back at my mom's house. I don't have a car. I don't have a job. I'm not a Marine anymore. I lost my identity. I lost my purpose. And the third month hit me and I fell into a really, really deep depression. I stopped shaving. I stopped showering. I wouldn't leave my bedroom. I was drinking every day. I started smoking pot again. I started taking pain pills because I don't have to worry about a drug test. I fell right back into what I was doing prior to going into boot camp. And one day I found myself, I go into my stepfather's armoire and I grab his gun and I sit it on my lap and I'm crying. And luckily at that time, I had the right mind to reach out and call my girlfriend. And I call her. I said, hey, something's not right. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm standing here and I'm looking at a pistol in my lap. I need help. Within 5 minutes, she was at my house. She comes over. She takes the gun from me. Later that evening, my mother comes home and I tell her, I said, Mom, there's something wrong. I said, something's not right. I need to see a doctor. Now, I didn't tell her I took my stepfather's gun and sat it in my lap. She would have had me fully committed at that point. And I was not trying to go into an institution at 21 years old. So that week, we made appointments with the doctors. We got in there and they diagnosed me with bipolar 1 manic depressive disorder. Their first solution was to put me on medicine. And what I like to tell people is no matter what it is the doctor is putting you medicine for, whether it's a heart condition or cancer or psychiatric reasons, if you get put on medicine, please be honest with your doctors. I was never honest with them. I wasn't telling them I was drinking 12 beers a day, smoking an eighth of weed, taking painkillers. So when I would go back for the 30, 60, or 90-day checkup, whenever the doctor wanted to see me, and he would say, how is everything going? I said, it's worse. None of this is working. I don't understand why. So their solution, because I wasn't honest with them, was, well, maybe those medicines don't work. We'll try you on these types of medicines over here. I would go back for another 30, 60, 90-day checkup. The same thing. Okay, well, they ain't working. Well, let's put you on these medicines. Matter of fact, let's up the milligrams. Let's add a fourth medicine to the 3 that you're doing because they counteract each other. This on and off of medicine, up and down of milligrams, went on from the age of 21 all the way up until the age of 44 when I finally got into rehab. Like someone with bipolar, I would be on medicines for 6 to 7, 8 months, and I'd be like, I'm feeling okay. I don't need this medicine. Why am I even taking it? And I would simply stop taking the medicine and be good for about 3 months maybe, and then have a severe crash and have to go back to the doctors. And why'd you stop taking it? Because I felt fine. That means they were working, Tim. Oh, I don't need it. You know what I mean? There's something wrong with me. I'd rather self-medicate anyway. I don't want to put all this medicines into my body. So this went on and off for 20 plus years. But during the entire time of me on and off this medicines, I was losing jobs every 8 months, 10 months. I think the longest job I've had since the age of 21 was 2 years long. Since the age of 21 till the age of 44, I went through 46 employments. And some of them would last 30 days. Some would last 90. Like I said, the longest was 2 years. But for me, it couldn't have been the alcohol or the drugs. Right. That just cannot be possible. It was my employer. It was my fellow employees. It was the times I had to be there. They were too stringent on the rules. It was everything else other than my mental illness or my addiction, because that possibly couldn't be it, because if it was that simple, then I should have just corrected it. But I wasn't ready or willing to accept that I had an alcohol or drug problem, or that my mental illness wasn't being taken care of. So it gets to be, I'm about 32 years old. I don't know, my 20th or 30th job. And my wife looks at me and she's like, Tim, we have 2 daughters. What are you doing? And I said, I just don't know. I can't hold a job. I don't understand it. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know why I'm here. I've lost my self-esteem. I've lost the love for myself. I'm like completely lost at this time. And she says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I miss sports. I miss competing. I'm still in good shape. I'm 32 years old. I want to get back into doing something. And she says, like what? And I said, I think I want to do mixed martial arts. And she looks at me like I'm crazy. And I said, well, they've got local gyms down here. I've been training my whole life. I want to try it. Bless her heart. She says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 1 year. If you can't make money doing this and you can't make a life of it, and after 1 year, you got to let it go. You got to stop. You got to get a 9-to-5 job, and you have to support our family. And I said, okay. So within 6 months, I got my first fight, was making some decent money. And that 1 year ended up being almost 5 years long, where I fought up and down the East Coast, fought on TV. I fought for belts. I was doing pretty good. Now, I wasn't making that much money, $1,500, $2,000 a fight, but my self-esteem, my self-worth, the way I felt about myself, I felt incredible. Yeah. And I tell people that no matter how many drugs I've done or how much alcohol I've drank, nothing ever compared to when you're walking out of the back of the locker room and you're fighting in front of 4,000 people and the lights are going off and the music's going off and everybody's cheering, and that endorphin dump, that dopamine spike is greater than any high I've ever experienced in my entire life. Nothing has ever matched it, and I don't think anything ever will. And I think I got addicted also to that feeling of feeling like a god, feeling like everybody's yelling for me, and feeling famous or special, because, not too many people endeavor in cage fighting. It comes to I'm 35 or going on 36, and I'm at my last fight at Harrah's Casino up in Philadelphia, PA, and it's fighting for the 155-pound belt. And like halfway through the first round, I put him in a rear naked choke, and I felt something pop in my right shoulder, and I get this crazy burning sensation that goes all over my shoulder. I end up having to let go. He flips me over and chokes me out. I get back to the locker room and I go to put my shirt on, and my trainer looks at me and goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "I can't lift my right arm." I said, "You have to help me put my shirt on." So I put my shirt on. I go out into the casino where I had like 30 friends and family. And my wife goes and hands me a beer. And she says, "Don't worry about it, you know." But I go and I grab it with my left hand. Now, even though I'm left-handed, I'm dominantly right. So she immediately notices, "Why'd you grab that with your left hand?" And I said, "I can't lift my right arm." And she says, "Are you kidding me right now?" I said, "No, something's wrong." She's like, "That's it. You're done." She's like, "That you're done. That's it. You had fun. Now you're going to have to go to the doctor and see what happened." So I go to the doctor next week, and I torn my rotator cuff in 3 places. And I had to have emergency surgery that week. That laid me up for 9 months in a cast, in a sling. I had to sleep in traction where my arm had to sleep above my head for 6 months, tied to the damn curtain rod. It was awful. But that started a 4.5 year long battle with OxyContins that my doctors would just prescribe to me. And we're talking, I'm 47 now. So 11, 12 years ago, Oxys were kind of new, and they sold Oxys as saying, these are non-addictive opioids.
Yep.
And you can stop them whenever you want without any side effects. And they would simply give them to me. I didn't have to go to a pain management clinic. I didn't have to go see a specialist. I just went to my primary care physician every 30 days, and he would just refill them like they were Tic Tacs. I had no problems getting them, and I started at 5 milligrams and 10, and then ultimately I ended up at 20 milligram OxyContins. And on top of it, I was drinking 12 to 18 beers a day and smoking around a quarter a weed. So that was my feel-good concoction, was the OxyContin, the 12 to 18 beers, and about a quarter of weed. And like every good addict, I wasn't taking one every 4 hours. I was taking 2 to 3 to 4 every 4 hours. I was running through my prescription 2 weeks before the doctor would refill it. So I would have to come up with some type of, "Oh, I knocked it into the toilet. I lost half my prescription. Can you refill it early?" Or, I opened my car door and they fell out. And that only works so many times before the doctor's like, "Hey, listen, I can't refill them until your 30 days are up." So then that would force me to call my friends and get something to hold me over until my doctor would fill it. It got to the point where I got really scared. I'm taking, 10 to 15, 20 milligram oxys, drinking 12 to 18 beers a day. And I remember I was sitting on my bed and I was like, man, I could possibly die one night when I go to sleep because I'm taking all these downers.
Yeah.
And even though this is what I've been doing for 4.5 years, my body might just say, "You know what, screw this, I'm done." And I'm going to go to sleep one night doing what I've been doing for so long, and my body's just going to shut down. And my mental illness and my addictive disease say, "Well, why don't you just take the rest of them right now?" So I reach over on my armoire and I dump the bottle out in my hand, and I had 18 20 milligram oxys, and I take all 18 of them. I go out into the living room, I sit down, and I guzzle a 12-pack of beer within 45 minutes. I then go into my bedroom, and I remember laying down on the bed and saying, "Please, God, don't let me wake up. I can't live this way anymore. I don't know how to stop. I just want the pain to go away." And I pass out. I wake up the next day, like 8, 9 o'clock at night, like 18, 19 hours later. And my first thought was, holy shit, I didn't die. My second thought was to immediately get up, go into the bathroom, grab my refill that was sitting on the counter, and dump it into the toilet. I remember looking at myself in the mirror and saying, "This is going to get bad. But no matter how bad this gets, we are never taking pain medicine again."
Wow.
For the next 10 days of my life, I believe I was the sickest I have ever been in my entire 47 years on this planet. The entire gambit of coming off of opioids, the throwing up, the going to the bathroom, the anxiety, the panic attacks, the sweats, the fever, the chills, the restless leg syndrome, not being able to sleep, just complete withdrawal off of the opioids. But every day, in between the throwing up and the crying and the going to the bathroom, I would look in the mirror and say, remember this feeling. We are never doing this again. After the 10 days, I decided to get in my truck and go for a ride because I had to get out of the house. I was in the house just sick as a dog. And I get in my truck and I'm driving through this beautiful reservoir in Loch Raven that we used to go to high school. And I'm driving through it and I'm crying. And I'm banging on the steering wheel and I'm banging on the roof of my truck. And I'm like, why am I here? Why did I live? What's my purpose? If there is something else out there that created me and loves me, then why am I suffering so bad? How could something that loves me so much is put me through so much pain? At that point in my life, I had no faith in a higher power, in a God, whatever you may call it. I had no faith in something else out there because to me, if something created me and loved me so much, why was I suffering so bad? And I'm driving through the reservoir and I get to this tree that in 1996, 2 years after I graduated, my best friend lost control of his vehicle, hit the tree, and unfortunately lost his life at the age of 18. And I get up to the tree, and his parents had put this beautiful vase on the tree, and they have a picture of him that is nailed into the tree. And I get up to it and get out of my truck, and I go up to the tree. I'm crying. I'm like, Bill, I need help. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I survived. If there is anything else out there besides me, please send me a sign. Please let me know that I'm not alone, that everything is going to be okay. And I get back in my truck and I go to leave the reservoir. As I'm driving out of the reservoir, for some reason, I pull over on the left-hand side of the road facing oncoming traffic. And I pull over and I'm wiping the tears. I'm blowing my nose. And I sit there for about 10 minutes. I'm crying. And this car pulls up. And since I'm on the wrong side of the road, now we're windshield to windshield. And I watch this gentleman get out of his vehicle. He opens the back door. He grabs his dog. He's about to walk across the street to where the water is and go take his dog for a walk. And I'm looking at this man. I'm like, man, he looks familiar. Man, I know him from somewhere. So I get out of my truck. And all of a sudden, it dawns on me. It was my best friend who passed away in 1996. It was his father. This date is March 16th, 2017. 21 years later. I haven't seen this man since the day of my friend's funeral. And I get out and I say, Mr. Bill, is that you? And he looks over at me and he says, Timmy, is that you? I said, yes. He goes, what's wrong? And I fall to the curb and I'm crying. I'm like, I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. I tried to commit suicide. I lived. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know my purpose. And he walks over to me and he puts his hand on my shoulder. And he says, Timmy, I'm not supposed to be here this morning. My bags are packed in my car. I was supposed to leave at 6 a.m. and head down to Myrtle Beach for a family reunion trip. My wife came to me in a dream last night and told me to hold off and come to this park at 10 a.m. this morning and walk the dog. I believe I was sent here to see you. And I looked up at him and I said, Mr. Bill, I just stopped at Billy's tree and asked him for a sign that we weren't alone, that there was something else out there. And he looks at me and said, everything's going to be okay, Timmy. They're watching out over us. We're being protected. And I get in my truck. And as I'm driving out of the park, I have about 10 minutes to where I feel as if everything is going to be all right. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be protected. And this is how cunning and baffling and manipulative that our addiction is. It twists my thoughts and it says, you're right. You are being protected. You're being watched out over. Nothing is going to happen to you. So you don't have to stop drinking or doing drugs because nothing will happen to you. So for the next 4 years of my life, from 2017 until the March 5th, 2021, the day I went into rehab, I drank the most alcohol I've ever drank in my entire life. I didn't go back and do the pain pills, but because I didn't have the pain pills, now the 12 to 18 beers wasn't enough. You know, the Sam Adams alcohol content wasn't enough. I switched over to the Raging Bitches, the Flying Dogs that had 11, 12, 15% alcohol in one beer, and I was still drinking 12 to 18 of those. And then for one reason, I go to the liquor store and I get my 12 pack, and I see these little miniatures on the counter that are always on the counter of the liquor store. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take 4 of these Fireball miniatures. I'm going to test them out. And I remember getting in my truck and taking that miniature back. And it gave me that same feeling that a pain pill gave me, that warm blanket feeling that just engulfs your body and goes all the way down to your toes, and you get hot and warm. And I remember saying, this is what I've been missing. Okay, this is what I need. So for the next year and a half, I would still get my 12 to 18 beers, but I would pick up 5 to 6 miniatures. And then eventually the 12 to 18 beers only went down to 12. Now I'm picking up 10 miniatures. And then that 12 went down to a 6-pack. Now I'm picking up 20 miniatures. And the last year and a half of my addiction, the beer completely stopped. I would stop at the store at 6:30 in the morning when the liquor store opened up. I would get a sleeve of Fireball miniature, which is 10 of them. I would finish all 10 of those by lunchtime. On my lunch break, I'd go to the nearest liquor store. I'd get another 10. I'd finish all 10 of those by the time I got off of work, which was 3:30, 4 o'clock. I would stop back at another liquor store. I would grab another 10 and a 6-pack. The last year and a half of my drinking, I was drinking anywhere from 25 to 35 Fireball miniatures and a 6-pack of beer every night. One of those miniatures is 2.5 shots. So 2.5 times 30 is 60 to 80 Fireball shots a day that I was drinking, on top of a 6-pack of beer, on top of smoking a quarter of weed. I was killing myself. One night I was leaving the liquor store and I just got this brand new F-150 and I hit something. I still to this day honestly have no recollection of what I hit. I don't know if it was a parked car, a concrete barrier. I had no idea. But I remember pulling into the driveway and coming into the house and telling my wife, I just hit something. I'm not dealing with this shit tonight. I'm going to bed. And I go in my bedroom and I pass out. I wake up that next morning like a blackout drunk, because that's what I was. And I say, hey, good morning, everybody. I'm going to go to the grocery store and get milk and bread. What else do we need for breakfast? And my wife just looks at me and she says, how in the hell are you going to do that, Tim? I said, in my brand new truck in the driveway. What are you talking about? She says, Tim, go outside and look at your truck. So I get outside and driver's side's fine. I walk over around to the passenger side of my truck, and the side mirrors ripped off the truck. It's not even there anymore. And the front passenger tire is hanging off the rim and it's pushed up underneath of my bumper. I honestly don't know how I drove it home, other than I was less than a block away from my house. And I probably had that, oh shit, I better get this in my driveway, because if I get pulled over, I'm going to jail. That's the only thing I can think of. But I'm sitting there looking at it. I'm like, oh my God. And my wife pops her head out the front door and she says, you don't remember what you hit, do you? I said, I have no idea. She said, Tim, you could have killed yourself. You could have killed somebody else. I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to pack your bags and leave. I don't want you around the girls anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay. So I call AAA. They come over to put the spare on me. I grab my bags. I call my buddy. Hey, man, can I come over for a few days? You know, let the wife cool down a little bit. She'll let me back in a couple of days and everything's going to be okay. You know, I ain't got to worry about nothing. So I call my buddy. He's like, sure, man, come on over. So I go over to his house. I explain to him what's happening. He's like, well, man, it's Friday night. You just got kicked out of your house. You wrecked your truck. We might as well go to the damn bar. I'm like, you know what? Absolutely. Because now I have a justifiable reason to go to the bar. I wrecked my truck and my wife kicked me out of the house. So we go to the bar. I get completely shit-faced. And as I'm leaving the bar, less than 12 hours prior to me wrecking it, I rear-end somebody at a red light. I get out. I look at the guy. I'm like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. Luckily, he had a tow hitch on the back of his truck. His truck was scratchless. There was nothing on it. But now the front of my bumper's all V'd in from the tow hitch. I'm looking at him. I'm like, well, your vehicle's okay. You're okay. I'm out of here, buddy. And I slapped him on his back. And I backed up and I took off and went down the highway and got out of there. I knew if the cops were coming, I was going to jail and the truck was getting impounded. So I get back to my buddy's house. I'm like, dude, I can't stay here. I got to just go be by myself and think shit out. I can't stay here. I got to go. So I grab my bags. I stop at the liquor store. I get 2 sleeves of Fireball. And I go and I park my truck at one of those park and rides where people can park for the day and get on a bus and go to work. Mm-hmm. And I park my vehicle. I turn my phone off. And I sit there for 2 days. Drinking and passing out and throwing up and drinking and passing out and throwing, not eating a damn thing, just drinking and passing out and throwing up. And every once in a while I'd start my vehicle or turn on some sad ass music and really put it on myself. I'm a piece of shit father, husband, son, friend, all the jobs I've lost, all the arguments I've caused, all the names I've called my children or my wife or my parents, just all the bad stuff I've done over the year, and really just told myself I'm not worth living, and the world would just be a better place without me in it. And I sat there for 2 days, and finally on the second day, at 7 after 10 in the morning on March 5th, 2021, I decided to turn my phone on. As I turn it on, all these messages are popping up. But 2 minutes after I turn it on, the phone rings. And I look down and it says Westchester, Pennsylvania. And my first thought is, I don't know anybody in Pennsylvania. It's probably a scam call or a bill collector, whatever. But for some reason, I pick it up. And I say, hello. It's my childhood friend, Brandon Novak, on the other line. And he's like, Lodgen, what the fuck are you doing? I said, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm drunk, and I'm tired. And he says, good, motherfucker. That's what you need. I just got off the phone with your mom and your wife. I got a plane ticket ready for you this evening at 8:30 p.m. I got you into Banyan Treatment Centers down West Palm Beach, Florida. I want you to get on that plane and go get your life back. And honestly, I'm on the end of that phone, kind of just agreeing with them, just so I can hang up the phone, because I honestly didn't want to hear that I had to go to rehab. Because for me, I couldn't comprehend the fact that my life had gotten that bad that I have to go to a rehabilitation center. I didn't want to hear that. So I'm just like, yeah, man, okay. I hang up the phone. 5 minutes goes by, my wife calls. Where are you? We've been worried sick about you. We thought you were dead. Where are you? And I said, I'm at the parking lot. She said, I just talked to Brandon. Please come home, pack your bags, take a shower, try to eat something, and try to take a nap. I had about 4 hours before I actually had to leave for the airport. So I go home, I take a shower, pack my bags. I couldn't eat and I couldn't take a nap. I'm in full-on panic mode at this point. I'm having anxiety. My mind's racing. Holy shit, I got to go to rehab. He never told me, how long am I going for? Is this a 30-day, 60, 90-day program? It's in Florida. I got to leave the state. What about my truck? What about my job? What about everything else other than what about me getting better? I was coming up with every excuse that I could possibly imagine other than going to rehab. And I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't go. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I just can't do it. And I truly believe my addiction and my mental illness knew this was the last time it had a chance to take me away. And my mental illness says, grab my hand and come with me. I will take the pain away from you. And it walks me into the basement of my home, and it tells me to throw a rope around my neck. It tells me to stand up on the bucket. It tells me to step off, and it will take the pain away from me. And I listen. And I go into the basement of my home where my children live. And I step up on a bucket and I throw the rope around my neck. And I truly have believed and learned to come to the realization that there's no such thing as coincidences. Things happen at the exact moment when they're supposed to happen to you for a reason. As I'm stepping off this bucket, my wife comes running down the stairs because she realizes I'm not in the bedroom taking a nap. And literally, as my foot is coming off the bucket, she yells at me, what are you doing? I said, I can't go. I can't do this. I just want this pain to go away. And she simply looks at me and says, do you know what this will do to your little girls? Please get off of that bucket and get on that plane. Get on that plane and everything is going to be okay. I take the rope from around my neck. I fall to the floor. I cry for about 5 to 10 minutes. I go upstairs and I call Brandon. I'm like, hey, man, I'm going. I got to go. If I don't go and get on that plane tonight, my addiction and my mental illness is going to kill me. And all he says is, I'm proud of you. I love you. Call me when you pass security. I want to make sure you're getting on the plane. I said, okay. A couple hours go by. My mom takes me to the airport. I get past security. I call him, hey, man, I got 35 minutes till the plane leaves. Everything's checked in. I'm just waiting to board the plane. And he simply says, I'm proud of you. I love you. You're about to get back everything that you've ever lost times 10. And he hangs up the phone. What happened to me next in that airport to this day is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me in my life. As I go to sit down at the seat in the airport, as I sit down in the chair, I get this overwhelming feeling of hope that engulfs my entire body. It was the same warm blanket feeling that drugs and alcohol used to give me, except this time I feel my worry, my doubt, my fear, my anxiety, and it felt like my addiction was lifted out of my body. And I hear this woman's voice I've never heard before, nor have I ever heard it since. And she was very loving, and it was calming. And she simply said, everything is going to be all right. It was the most amazing experience that I've ever had in my life. And now that I have 2.5 years of recovery, I truly believe that I had a spiritual awakening and a spiritual experience in that airport. When I got to rehab and the doctors did all the tests on me, they called me back into the doctor's office and he says, how old are you? I said, I'm 44. He said, okay, your liver and kidneys are about to go into failure. They are 4 times what they should be at your age. Your blood pressure is 167 over 145. You're about to have a stroke. He says, I don't know how you got in here at this time in your life. He said, but if you would have waited 1 more month, he said, you would have not have made it to your 47th birthday. You would have died of alcohol-related disease. He said, you came at the exact time to save your life and reverse everything that alcohol and drugs have done to you. That was the moment I realized that there was no such thing as coincidences. All of this timed out and happened in the exact moment it was supposed to happen to save my life. I took rehab as seriously as I took drugs and alcohol. I went 100 miles an hour. I wanted everything that they wanted to show me. I went to all the meetings every day. I did all the homework. I did all the journaling. I went to extra meetings for military veterans and first responders. I started working out with a personal trainer. I changed my diet. And I started to believe and have faith in a higher power, something greater than me that can restore me to sanity, which I've never thought of before. I completely changed my life mentally, spiritually, and physically. I was balanced finally for the first time in my life after 44 years. And when I left there after 32 days, in rehab, they would tell you, do 90-90, do 90-90. And I'm like, excuse me. I was like, how in the hell am I supposed to do 90 and 90? And I remember the counselor looks at me and he says, did you drink and drug every day? I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. He said, how many hours a day? I said, oh, 12, 15 out of the 24. He's like, and you're telling me you don't have 1 hour a day for your sobriety and your health and the rest of your life? I said, oh, shit. Okay. Yeah, you got me. He said, exactly. I ended up doing 98 and 90. I got a sponsor. I found a home group. I made recovery number 1 in my life, not everything else. And I still to this day keep recovery number 1, because as soon as I put it second, that's going to be the first thing that I lose. As soon as I start thinking about something else that's more important than my sobriety and my recovery, that's going to be the first thing that I lose. And everything that I've worked so hard for goes away without me staying sober and living a life of recovery. And I say a life of recovery because being sober and living a life of recovery are two different animals. You can just be abstinence from drug and alcohol, but be a miserable son of a bitch. Mm. Recovery teaches you how to live life and be a completely different human being. It teaches you to love yourself and love others, gives you a different perspective in life. You learn gratitude. Even in the darkest moments, you learn to be grateful for whatever your higher power, whatever you believe in, is sending your way. And I have 2.5 years sober now. I just celebrated on the 5th this month. And within these 2.5 years of being sober, I have been fortunate enough to now be on my 111th podcast, sitting here talking to you. I have been in 7 mental health and sober magazines. And in February of this year, I was voted Baltimore, Maryland's most inspirational person of 2023. From addict to advocate. All these beautiful things have been happening to me. And 2 months ago, I find out that all 3 of my daughters and my sister were molested by my brother. A week later, I find out that my cousin died from a massive heart attack after suffering with addiction for 38 years. And in that same week, I find out that my wife of 28 years has been having affairs on me all during my sobriety. I found myself in a situation where my thought process was going faster than I could manage. I found my thoughts going into a dark place that I never imagined me ever going back to. I found myself sitting in the parking lot of a liquor store contemplating going in and throwing away 2.5 years of sobriety. I luckily had the right mind to reach out and say I wasn't okay. My mother then called my friend Brandon. He calls me immediately and says what's going on, and I tell him. And he says, well, let me ask you something. When's the last time you took care of yourself? I said, I don't know, man, maybe 2.5 years ago. He said, so you're telling me you do all these podcasts, you travel to all these different states, you speak to all these veterans and first responders, jails, institutions, and rehabs, and you tell all these people about your story, and you haven't loved yourself or put yourself first in the last 2.5 years? How can you continue to take out of your cup and have nothing to fill it back up? How can you continue to help others when you're not helping yourself? He said, I'm going to suggest something to you. I suggest that you go away for 2 weeks and get your mind right. He's like, before you relapse and before you lose the 2.5 years that you've worked so hard for, before you lose what you're telling people that they're capable of doing. He said, please just do me that favor. He said, I do it once a year. I go away for a week. He said, I turn off my phone. I get away. I get grounded. I reboot the system. He's like, I regenerate. He goes, and then I come back stronger than I ever have. So July 12th of this year, I decided to go to the retreat in Pennsylvania. I took 2 weeks of mental health therapy for myself. I got away from my cell phone. I got back into classes. I relearned some things that I forgot over the last 2.5 years. I learned some new coping skills. I learned meditation, which I did every once in a while, but I learned different breathing techniques to calm my brain, to calm my mind, to calm my thoughts. And I got to meet new people in recovery that, as I was sitting there and I was speaking, and it's kind of funny because some of the counselors at this retreat recognized me from podcasts that I have done. And they said, hey, were you on this? Were you on that? And I said, yeah. They're like, would you mind speaking to the group tonight? So I got a chance to speak in front of 60 to 80 clients. And I realized that I was sent there for a reason. I was supposed to be there at that time in my life and in their lives to reach one more person. My perspective changed. I wasn't just there for myself, but it was almost as if I was sent there to reach more people. And that's been really huge for me in my in my recovery on everything. I realized that it wasn't my fault what happened to my daughters. I could have been a helicopter parent. I could have been there 100% of the time. But unfortunately, in life, we cannot be with our children 100% of the time, 24 hours a day. And it's unfortunate that things like this happen to your children, but they do. I shouldn't have blamed myself for it. I couldn't have stopped my cousin from having a massive heart attack after 38 years of drug addiction and alcoholism. His body said, you know what, I'm done fighting. Enough's enough. It's time to release you from your pain and your suffering. And I tried to empathize with the actions of my wife. Because for 28 years, I put her and my children through hell. I was a verbal monster. Thank God I was never physically abusive, but I said the meanest, nastiest things that you shouldn't say to your children and your wife or your parents. And here I am. I don't remember most of it. Like it didn't ever happen. And my loved ones, who I love the most, they will remember those words forever. That old cliche of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me is such bullshit. Those words scar the heart and they are there forever. Your bones will heal, but those messages that we say, the words that come out of our mouth, once they are said, they can never be taken back. And for people who are addicts or blackout drunks, I don't know if it's a privilege, but we have the privilege of not remembering the awful things that we say and do to our loved ones. Maybe it's a defense mechanism that the brain saves us from reliving over and over and over again. But the truth of the matter is the people in our lives are traumatized by our actions. And for 28 years, I was a monster. My little girl should never see somebody pick up a dining room table and throw it into the kitchen or flip a couch or I used to walk in the front door and everybody would scatter like roaches with the lights coming on. They would all go in their rooms and lock the doors because they were afraid of their father. Those are things that I can never take back. But I also cannot beat myself up for them. It's part of my story. I don't have to be that person anymore. My children don't have to worry about that man walking in the front door anymore. And I'm able to show them that no matter what they have gone through, also the trauma that they've endured, we can be okay. We can deal with it properly. We can get the proper health we need. We don't have to pick up a drink or a drug. We don't have to numb the pain away. It's okay to feel ashamed. It's okay to feel embarrassed. It's okay to feel as if it may be your fault, but it's not. And it's okay to share your feelings. The more we hold them in, it's kind of like that soda that you shake up, and eventually when you open the top, it just bursts. And a lot of us turn to drugs and alcohol to numb those feelings because the pain is too great and we just don't want to deal with it. But I've learned to understand that everything that happens isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. I've changed that perspective, that everything has happened to me, even though, it's not been really good over the last 3-4 months. It's happening for me. It's happening for me to grow and understand more in life and to still be grateful to be sober, still be grateful to have a chance to reach one more person. This last month, I've had an opportunity. I now work in a substance abuse and mental health treatment facility. And I work firsthand with the patients that come in. I teach class. I'm in the trenches with them when they're coming in off the streets, coming in from jails or institutions. And I get to be there and share my experience of strength, courage, and hope with them and show them that if I can do it after 28 years, survive suicide attempts, survive the fact that my children were sexually molested, my wife had an affair on me, and I'm still standing here sober, that they can do it too. And as long as they don't give up, they haven't failed. As long as they keep fighting and they keep fighting and they keep fighting, they will never be a failure. It's I'm blessed to be alive. I'm grateful to be sober. And I'm thankful that I have another opportunity to reach one more person speaking with you today on your podcast. I'm truly grateful that you have allowed me to share some of my story with you and your listeners.
The gratitude is all from me to you, man. That's just one heck of a story. There's so much that we can touch upon. Even when you started though, I when you first started, I was taken aback, and you had those strong feelings when your dad left at that young age, 6 years old, to have those feelings of it's your fault right off the bat, and I can relate in different ways and so much of what you had said, especially the childhood part. I did have a dad that loved me, but I had an active dad, and I had, he was very active and stuff, and there was stuff, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids aren't supposed to see. And you talked about having that like in your back pocket, and I had that. It was different. Yours was different. Your dad had left. That was your back pocket. My dad was active. That was in my back pocket. And, for me, it started growing this, and I say this a lot, this chip on my shoulder, and like I always had it. And I had that chip on my shoulder. You said your whole life. I had it my whole entire life. I have it right now. It's just kind of suppressed right now. I've learned to work through it. I've learned to work with it too. There's times that chip on my shoulder has served me well, whether it's competitiveness, whether it's, I got this, I'm going to figure this stuff out, whatever it may be. But your story is absolutely incredible. I have to touch upon though, you had several divine intervention moments, and you have such a spirituality about you, Tim, man. Like you seem to where you are today to really look out and zoom out to see, there's another reason, there's another purpose for Tim today. Even when you went on that trip, you realized that, hey, I was sent here. And next thing you know, you're speaking to 60, 70 people. And you have a big social media following, and you recover out loud. 111 podcasts. Is that that's since you've been sober? 111 podcasts.
Since I started my first podcast when I was 6 months sober. So within 2 years. Yeah.
111 podcasts. And, we said this offline. The beauty about a podcast is you could be helping one person today and have no idea about it. And you said it so eloquently. Actually, if you don't mind, can you say that again? Because I'd rather it come from your mouth of what the beauty of helping one person through a podcast could be, which we don't even know about, and the ripple effect of positivity it can cause.
Absolutely. I'm going to start with this. The very first podcast that I did here in Baltimore. The gentleman who was running the podcast was in Oahu, Hawaii. I had 6 months sober. He said, sure, come on. I don't care if we have 10 years. I want to hear somebody that's still in active, early sobriety. So I do the podcast, not thinking anything of it. About 3 or 4 weeks goes by, and then it airs. 2 weeks after it airs, I'm actually in Delaware picking up a kitchen table to drop off at Brandon Novak's sober house for him because I have a pickup truck. As I'm sitting in the garage waiting for the gentleman to open the door so I can load it onto the back of my truck, my phone rings, and it says Columbus, Ohio. I don't know anybody from Ohio. My first thought is a scam or bill collector. I pick it up. The gentleman's on the other line. He says, hey, is this Tim? I said, yes, it is. Who's this? He said, hey, man, this is Tony. I said, I'm sorry, buddy. I don't know no Tony. He said, no, man, this is a Prophet. He said, I served with you in the Marine Corps in 1995. This is 2021. I was like, how did you get my phone number, man? He said, I got it off of Facebook. I hope you don't mind. I said, no, not at all. What's going on, man? You don't sound too good. He said, I'm not. He said, I've been an addict for 18 years, opioids and alcoholic. I've lost marriages. I've lost jobs. He said, but I wanted to call you. He said, because 4 days ago, I listened to that podcast that you were on. He said, and I got 4 days sober for the first time in 18 years. I wanted to call and tell you I love you and thank you for giving me the strength and the courage to change my life. And he hung up the phone. I cried for like 10 minutes in my truck. But what hit me was, if I can do a podcast in Baltimore that was filmed in Hawaii and somebody in Ohio saw it, and it wasn't a coincidence that the one person who needed to see it was somebody that I personally knew, that was meant to be. How many more podcasts, how many more people could I reach? And a gentleman at one of the AA meetings that I go to, he says, you have no idea the ripple effect that you are creating by reaching out and sharing your story with so many people. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, Tim, do you realize that maybe when you share your story, that person is in active addiction, and then they live a life of recovery, and they go on to have children, and their children are grown up in a house without alcohol and drugs. And then they grow up and their children grow up in a house without alcohol and drugs. He says, now we're talking grandchildren. He says, what you're doing now has a bigger effect than you could ever imagine. You could affect generations just by telling the truth and telling your story of addiction and recovery. He said, and you'll never know the people or the amount of lives that you've touched. He said, it's that ripple effect when you throw the rock into the water and it just continues to go out. He said, with the internet and these podcasts, these interviews are going to last forever. You never know how long your story and your strength of courage, hope, and recovery could save lives forever. I mean, and I was like, blew my mind.
Yeah, you're giving me chills right now because, like we said off camera, I started this to help one person today, right? That's the mantra. And you don't think about the ripple effect, like you had said. My wife likes to tell me about me that I broke generations of alcoholism. I broke that mold. Like, so my children are younger. My daughter's 10. My son just turned 9 2 days ago. And, they're not growing up with an alcoholic active dad. And so, like you had just said, I haven't even thought past them, but their kids, they're going to grow up a different way. Like, I'm going to make my own mistakes for sure. And believe me, I do. And one of my big prayers is please give me more patience, but they're not going to grow up the way in the environment that I had grown up in, and either of their children. And you pointed that out to me, and, you just gave me chills with all that. And it's just amazing to me how, again, this is not to repeat myself. This is why I started too. And I have you on and I've been following you. And it's just it's so much real and so authentic to actually sit here and talk to you and hear it like this and hear it one-on-one. And, this needs to be said also, Tim, is you reached out to me to come on. And what that tells me is you want to help more people. And by that first podcast in Baltimore that was sent to Hawaii and shot to Columbus, that you helped that one person right away, that this is sort of you must know in your heart of hearts that this is your purpose. And, as you were telling your story, Tim, all I kept thinking of was God kept him here for what he's doing right now.
100%. And that's what I know for a fact is I know what happened to me was happening for me. It was happening for me to do this right now and to help more people. I was always that kid or that guy, give me. I want more. Christmas, give me more presents. And my mom was always like, you have no idea what it feels like to give. It feels better to give than it is to receive. And I was like, there's no possible way. I want it all, my cup's half empty, the whole deal. There's no amount of money on this earth that feels as good as getting a message from somebody in United Kingdom or the Ukraine when it was getting bombed, or Switzerland or Africa, that I've gotten messages all over the world saying, thank you. Thank you for helping me through the darkest time in my life. I now have, 2 weeks sober, 6 months sober. You got me through a night where I wanted to commit suicide. I'm still here. I'm getting the help. Those messages that I receive randomly make me cry. Yeah. But what it does, it fills something inside of me. That it's not an ego fill. It's not, it doesn't fill my bank account with money. It fills my heart. It tells me that what I am doing has a purpose and a reason. And this is why I went through hell, to show people that the gift of life is so precious. And we, most of the time, take it for granted. And we get one shot at this. And I don't want to see somebody else waste it. I don't want to see somebody else waste 28 years like I did. It's not worth it. It doesn't bring anything but heartache, pain, death. And do you know what the odds are that you were born?
No. Oh, no, I don't know. Tell me.
Okay, so there's about almost 9 billion people on the planet.
Right.
The odds that you were born specifically, or that I was born specifically, is 1 in 400 trillion. We have already won the lottery, the biggest lottery of all, and that's called life. But what are you doing with it? I want to get back. I want to know that when I'm gone, that I've affected somebody else, that my name is remembered, and it doesn't have to be in fame and lights and, movies. I just want to know that my life had meaning.
Well, it does, because you are helping so many people. And you're helping, like we said again, you're helping people without even knowing it too. Those are just the people that have reached out to you and had said thank you. I had mentioned off camera, I've been blessed too. I'm sober 17 plus years. And, if you knew me 17 plus years ago, that was a complete impossibility. My life is a complete 180 from where it was 17 plus years ago. And you had said something also too, which is super important for me. Your sobriety comes first. If you put something before your sobriety, then you're going to lose that for sure. I'm a big believer in that. And I've said this before, and I learned this in the rooms, and I'm sure you've probably heard it, but I can put property of AA or property of my sobriety on everything that I have, including my family, including my wife, including my children. And my wife, she's been with me through the ringer too. She's been with me. We've been married. We just had our 15-year anniversary, but we've been together since 1999. So she's seen all of the ugliness, and she's seen it all, and she stuck with me somehow. And because she always saw that little glimmer of good in me when I wasn't out. But when I was a different person. But she had said, and I've said this many times too, but I want to share it with you because it falls under this umbrella of I owe everything to my sobriety. My 10-year anniversary, she gives me a card every year for my anniversary. But my 10-year anniversary, she said, Gary, we're so proud of you. Look at what you've done. Just think, if you hadn't done this and gotten sober, children wouldn't be here right now. And that chokes me up because, it's the truth for me. That is my truth. My ego, it sometimes doesn't want to go let that happen, but that's a bunch of BS bullshit, as you know. Yeah. That's the truth for me. And it's a beautiful truth. And here's another thing too, which I think is super important of where things are today, or where we are, is, like I said, I've been sober. I've been coming around for quite some time. And, I always was thinking, Tim, like, I don't help enough people. Like, I've had sponsees, and I do have sponsees now, but I would even tell my sponsor, I'm like, I don't have enough. And he's like, Gary, it's not about your roster of sponsees. He's like, you're helping people just by participating and going because you're all in. I said, yeah, but I really want to do more. And he said, all right, pray for God to send you guys. And that's what I was doing for a while. And guess what? God was sending me guys, right?
Nice.
Yeah, but I almost can't put a finger on where this podcast started, Tim. Like I told you off camera, and my wife's heard every crazy story, and I put this one together somehow. I really don't know where it came from. I really can't put a finger on it, and I'm all in on it. And even though people know I was sober, and I've been a sponsor, and I've a bunch of sponsees, but since I started this podcast, and I'm episode 10 was aired today, I've had so many people also getting some of those DMs on the side, like, hey, and it's crazy to me that they're complete strangers. They're not from all over the world just yet. One in the UK, none in Africa like you have yet, but and even people around here though, like people close to me, since I've come out and like really recovered out loud, I guess you can say, I guess it's a term. I guess it's what we're doing in a way, right? Even people close to me have been reaching out to me. Just this past week, I've had a girlfriend of mine, her brother was drinking himself to death, 52 years. He's in the ER. Gary, what do I do? Had him on, ready to go to a rehab. And, that same day, I had another family member, a friend of the family, similar story. Tried AA, was sober for a little bit older, lost his family, lost his house, got a DWI. Like, what do I do? How do I help this guy? And point is, I'm getting more of those, inquiries, and I lay in bed with my wife and she's like, Gary, realize you're helping people here, right? I'm like, yeah, I guess so. She's like, no, not I guess so. You are, but my point is, having you on here and having you share your story, like, man, like I look up to you right now. You're helping so many people. And like I said, you have a huge following, at least on Instagram and wherever it is. And people are following you because you have such an amazing story. You are so authentic and you are so real. And it's super, super inspiring.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it is real.
Yeah.
This isn't something you can read from a scripted book. I mean, I'm sure you could, but it wouldn't have the validity of somebody who's actually lived through the trenches and came out on the other side. And that's why I believe I was pushed down this path to now work in a recovery center, because I have a chance to be there when they're first walking in, still on drugs or still drunk or just being released out of handcuffs, and showing them that I was facing 6 years of prison one time in my life because of my anger and my drunkenness. I luckily didn't have to do it, but I was there, and they don't have to live that life anymore. And getting sober is easy. Making the decision to get sober is the hard part.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can just believe in yourself as much as you believe in those drugs and alcohol, you cannot fail. It just took me 28 years to realize that it was time. Some people, it's one and done. They go to rehab and they're done, or it's a year long, or they have I'll go through a phase and they don't ever go to rehab. Some people, it's a lifelong thing. Some people unfortunately never make it and they lose their life to the addiction and disease. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I will tell you this: I know what that hopeless feeling feels like. It is scary. It's scary to feel like nothing is ever going to go your way. You can't beat the disease of addiction. There's no possible way to go one day without numbing yourself.
Mm.
I wanted the freedom to drink and drug as much as I possibly could. I wanted the freedom of nobody giving a shit about me and telling me I couldn't do that. I didn't realize I really wanted the freedom of not being an active addiction. I wanted the freedom to be myself. And I lived in this cage when the entire time the goddamn key was in my pocket the entire time, and I never knew it. But as soon as I reached in and found it and opened up that door, my life has been more meaningful in the last 2.5 years than it has in the last 28. It's just been amazing.
You bring up your whole story though, and it's an important message too, is the power to speak up, to raise your hand and say, I need help. I think there's too many of us before
Yes.
we've gotten sober that don't realize it, or they're afraid to, or they're worried about what people are going to think about them, or they think that's a sign of weakness, when the truth is it's the most courageous, best thing that you can do for yourself is to raise your hand, pick up the phone, tell whoever you need to, like you had said multiple times through that amazing story of yours, where you raised your hand proverbially or actually did it. You needed help. And I think it's such an important message. And it's another reason, why I started this too. I keep saying it's to help one person, but part of that little mission statement I wrote, Tim, was to make sure that people realize that they're not alone and that they don't have to live this way anymore. Because
100%.
like you said, jails, institutions, and death, that's the path we're on. But you can alter your path, and you can change the entire trajectory of your family and everyone after you. And that's
Yeah,
no fluff, and that's no bullshit. That is just the fact of this life we have.
it absolutely is. And it's a simple solution for complicated people.
Amen. Yes.
It is so simple, but it's so hard to grasp and convince yourself that it's attainable and that you can do it. You never could have told me when I was in rehab that I would get 2.5 years. I just wanted to get 30 days and graduate out of the program. You never would have told me that I would have done 90 and 90 or got a sponsor and had a home group and really went, both feet into recovery. I just wanted to not drink for 32 days and I wanted to change my life. I never could imagine that I could do it and continue to do it. And I've never, except for the last 2 months, that one day, that one incident when all three things just came down on me, I have never thought about once picking up or drinking. I had one day of maybe 5 minutes of weakness, but I was able to use the tools that I've learned in the rooms of recovery and watching podcasts and just changing my persons, places, and things, and using the information that I've received over the last 2.5 years to notice my thought patterns and be proactive and make sure that I didn't lose my sobriety. And I tell the guys and the females at our place, I don't care what happens to me in life. I don't care. Nothing is taking my sobriety from me.
Mm.
Nothing.
You know,
I
you're
earned
on,
it.
you're on the front lines of that too. We talk about you on social media and all the people you're helping there, but you're literally on the front lines, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
people you had said they're in handcuffs still when they get to you, and you may be one of the first people they see. And I think there couldn't be a better person. I couldn't imagine a better person. That's the talk about divine. That's divine for that person walking in and seeing Tim Lodgen, the first person walking into that rehab.
No, it's again, it's where I need to be. And I've been a carpenter on and off for the past 25 years, making 40 plus an hour, sometimes 35, nothing under 30 for the last 15 years. I took a major pay cut doing this because it's not about the money. This
Mm.
is where I need to be in life. This is what
Mm.
I'm supposed to be doing. The money has nothing to do with it. The amount of the feeling that I get from helping somebody, you can take that money and go somewhere else. I'll be okay. I'll be okay because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And as long as I'm doing it for the right reasons, I'll be taken care of.
I mean, and you live it though. You're living it. Unbelievable. That's just so beautiful, man. We all know why you're here. We know why that God kept you here, man. Where can we find you? What are some of your handles where people want to come follow you?
My biggest following is on Instagram. It's at TLODGEN at T Lodgen. And I work with two nonprofits. One of them is the Overwatch Collective on Instagram, and that
Mhm.
is specifically for first responders, fire, police, EMT, and veterans. And we go ahead and we actually raise money for the veterans and first responders who maybe their private insurance or the VA won't take care of therapy for them. We raise money and we take care of what's left over for them out of pocket so they don't have to worry about getting to a therapist or getting their medicines or possibly getting a service dog for them. We go ahead and we take care of that for them. And then I work for another nonprofit called the Rockstar Testimony, and that is also on Instagram. That is a specific nonprofit organization that helps people with mental illness, suicide prevention, and addiction. And it's a beautiful two groups I'm involved with. They allow me to reach more people through their organizations. I've been able to travel and go to different states because of it and speak at fundraisers. And it's just been a beautiful gift that's been given to me. And you can find me on either one of those handles. I'm on Facebook, but it's kind of like I don't use that's kind of like not a recovery thing. My main thing, I want to stay focused on one thing,
Yeah.
so people don't have to find me spread out over a vast. Because there's TikTok, there's all that other stuff, but
Yeah.
I want to stay on. I'm on Instagram. That's my main one, and I post nothing but my recovery,
Yep.
my podcast, my fitness journey. How I went from being 225 pounds overweight to competing in a bodybuilding show last year and coming in third, and just showing people that you can completely change your life mentally, spiritually, and physically
Amen.
if you want it.
That's the other part of all of this, right? Is, I came in, Tim, just to stop drinking. Like I just couldn't do it anymore. Like I finally put my hands up, and I was in and out of, I went to rehab too. I thought all I did was smoke butts up there for 30 days, but it was the first time I went to an AA meeting. It was the first time I said, I'm Gary and I'm an alcoholic. And I remember as clear as day as I do right sitting here right now. And so the seed was planted, but I was out, went back out. I was in and out for 4 years. In fact, that rehab you keep reminding me is, it was April of 2002. I was, I worked downtown in 2005, September 11th, and there was a bunch of fire and EMT and first responders in that rehab with me, man, who I'll never forget. They were just amazing people. It really was. But, to have you on here, man, you are a beautiful, special person, a special man. You live a life of love and you live a life of service, and you live it, and you're the real deal. And I can't thank you enough, sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, to have someone like you reach out to me. And I figure, wow, this guy's asking me to come on my show. Maybe I'm doing something right here. And to meet you and to be in each other's lives now. I say this all the time. I'm big in keeping up relationships. Like, Tim, this isn't like a one-shot deal for me and you. And so I'm not that far from you. I'm up in Long Island, so I'm going to come down and visit you one of these days. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. And you're definitely gonna help more than one person today. You're gonna help a whole bunch of people with this one, my man.
Thank you for allowing me to come on the podcast and sharing my story. And the opposite of addiction is connection.
Amen to that. Amen, brother.
The bigger our support group, the bigger people we have to fall back on and ask for help, and the more people we can help. And that is the one beautiful thing about the recovery community is they truly, genuinely care about your well-being and want to see you succeed.
It's so true. I just said that same exact word for word to someone just the other day. We're in a place here, like there can't be enough of us. There just can't be enough of us. The more of us, the more people speaking out loud and speaking up on it, the more people are going to help. You live it every single day, and
Mm-hmm.
I admire the shit out of you, man. And it's just it's an honor to be on the same team as you, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for saying that. I forget sometimes, or maybe I've been told I don't give myself enough credit, but to be honest with you, I believe I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. I do forget sometimes that not not many people put themselves out there as much as I do,
Yeah.
but I got to do it. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you saying you remind me, you look up to me. I'm just doing what I believe that I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm grateful that I get a chance to do it.
I think your friend Brandon O did have a good piece of advice in what he said. Hey, man, you got to take care of Tim too. Sometimes I'm with you. Like I get it. Like, listen, you're not the type of person that's going to be patting yourself on the back for too long. But sometimes, man, it's all right. It's all right to say, hey, man, you know what? I'm doing okay today. And I think your friend
Yeah,
Brandon said it perfect. Like, you keep emptying out that cup, you got to fill it up. Take care of Tim too, man.
yeah, yeah. I know when I'm doing good when my daughters say they're proud of me.
Oh,
That's
what's
that's
better than
something.
that? What's
That's
better
something,
than that?
man. And I
Nothing.
know when my daughter's like, "You're still going strong. We're proud of you, Dad." That's like, okay, that's the icing right there.
Yeah, nothing make you stronger than that, right?
Yeah, that's when I know I'm still doing good.
That's the stuff, man. No doubt. Tim, thanks so much for coming on. I could talk to you all night, man. I really, sincerely, I can't thank you enough for coming on, for everything that you do, man.
I know. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. please stay in contact with me, and please let me know when this airs. I'm going to post everything and put your name out there and tag you. And if you need be, I can send you some more guests and keep this rolling. And let's just reach one more person.
I'm all in. I am all in for all that. And I'm going to take you up on that. And when this is ready to go, I'm going to have a whole packet for you to send out. And like I said, we'll stay in touch. We're not going anywhere. So it's a pleasure to be with you, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Gary.
Tim, God bless you, man. Thank you for tuning in to another powerful episode of the Begin Again podcast. We sincerely appreciate your time and support. We hope that today's conversation has ignited a spark within you, affirming that recovery is not only attainable, but can also be a wellspring of strength and resilience. Our ultimate goal is to make a difference in someone's life every single day. By sharing these stories of redemption, we strive to empower you and inspire you to unlock your fullest potential, facilitate positive transformations, and contribute to creating a better future for yourself, for your loved ones, and the world at large. If you know someone who could benefit from listening to our show, please share it with them. And if you resonate with our mission and feel compelled to do so, we would greatly appreciate your support through a 5-star review, following us on Instagram, and subscribing to our YouTube channel, The Begin Again Podcast. The more positive reviews we receive and the wider our message spreads, the greater our collective ability to help others realize that change is possible in their own lives. Thank you once again for being a part of our community. May you be blessed on your own journey of personal growth and transformation.